This happened not too long ago, when I was 26. Being older, Halloween hadn't been that big of a deal to me for probably a decade. It was sort of just another day to me. This year, I had most of the day off, but worked overnight from 10 to 6 a.m. I was a stalker for a local grocery store, so most nights were quiet, where I just work alone and at my own pace. By the time I left the house, the streets and sidewalks were already empty. No trick-or-treaters running around. However, when I parked and walked up to unlock the door and let myself in, I saw a couple of people around the side of the building in costumes. Didn't think much of it. Maybe some people just meeting up for whatever reason. I went in and relocked the doors, then started working. I was moving between the back warehouse and the aisles, stocking the shelves and doing all the usual. It really wasn't too long into my shift when I thought I heard someone say something outside the store. I went up to the front and saw that same group of people. They were close to the front windows, looking like maybe they were walking around. For reference, the store sat alone in a massive parking lot. There were some other buildings near it, but all unoccupied, so really the only reason to be in this parking lot was for the grocery store I worked at. But obviously, we weren't open. I stayed near the front and kept an eye on them. They passed by and were gone for 10 minutes, before coming back around. I wish I could have seen more of what they were actually doing, but the costumes they had on made it hard to tell if they were looking inside the store windows, or just standing near them. Either way, it was weird that they were hanging around here for so long, and for no reason. Couldn't see why they didn't walk around somewhere else. Eventually, I had to get back to working in other parts of the store, so I left the front. An hour or so went by. I'd been moving through the aisles, filling the shelves, and having one earbud in to listen to music while I worked. I was in one of the end aisles, far from the front, when I heard a knock at the door. It was 3 loud bangs against the glass. It startled me, but I quickly ran up to the front of the store to see who it was. I immediately saw the 4 guys in costumes, standing grouped up at the front, facing the window I was behind. I knew they saw me, and were clearly looking at me. I walked up closer and yelled through the glass, asking what they needed. As I stood there, I very quickly noticed none of them had bags or pillowcases for trick-or-treating. It would have been weird if they were still trick-or-treating at this time of night, let alone trying to at a closed grocery store. But at least it would have shown me that they might have been earlier, which would explain the costumes. Now it seemed like they were just wearing costumes to hide who they were. Not a single one of their faces was visible, and none of them responded. They just stood there, looking at me. I got really uncomfortable, but thought this could all be some Halloween prank, and honestly wasn't worth my time. I left and went back to the aisle I was in before. I still felt really weird about it, but held on to the idea that they were just doing something stupid to mess with me. Maybe they saw me walking inside earlier and thought it'd be funny. But it very quickly went much further than a simple joke. It wasn't 2 minutes later that there was an insanely loud thud against the glass at the front of the store. And before I could even make it to the end of the aisle to look, a second, even louder thud hit the glass, and was followed by what sounded like the door crashing open. I froze, hearing footsteps running in. I turned and sprinted to the back of the store. I was so scared I didn't even grab my bag that had my keys and wallet in it. I just sprinted straight out the back door, going to the road and continuing to run. When I had a chance to breathe, I called the police. By then, everyone was gone. We did have security footage though, showing exactly what happened, but it really didn't give any information that I didn't already know. The guys were hanging around outside the store for a couple of hours, and then smashed something against the door to break it open. They immediately ran in and were looking for me, which was the most horrifying part. They searched everywhere, one of them even having run to the back of the store and looked for me just 15 seconds after I got away. Had he seen me, the whole group might have chased me down the road, and things might have not ended so well for me. Ultimately, that was where things left off. What the group was actually wanting to do and all the other questions I have remain unknown.
Every cop sees something that they'll never forget, something that will stick with them for the rest of their life. What I am about to describe to you is that story for me. This is the most disturbing thing I have ever witnessed. When I turned 21, I joined the police force in a remote town that I won't name. The department needed new officers, and I was a young father who needed money, so the timing was perfect. Because I was a rookie, they assigned me to the night shift. It ran from 6 at night to 6 in the morning. The guys at the station sometimes teased me for my hours, saying that I always worked the crummiest shifts. I actually didn't mind them. I've always been a night owl. The guys even called me Nighthawk, and honestly, I kinda like that. Besides busting people for speeding and pulling over the occasional drunk driver, I spent most nights sitting back, listening to podcasts. In a weird way, it was kind of relaxing. After a year in the department, something happened one night that changed everything. A severe thunderstorm rolled into town and caused major power outages. Torrential downpour flooded most of the major roads. To be in the best position possible when accident reports came in, I parked my cruiser in a parking lot in the middle of town. At 2 in the morning, our dispatcher, Claire, radioed in. She reported that someone who sounded like an adult male claimed to have been kidnapped. They told her they were being held captive inside someone's home. Then, the call ended. When she redialed, the caller didn't answer. My cruiser had a built-in computer display that showed all the call details. Based on the address, I was about 10 minutes away, so I was probably the closest officer. I radioed in and told her I'd respond. I also requested backup. Another new officer named Chris chimed in and said he'd be on location in 5. Claire clicked on her radio, but hesitated for a few seconds over the static. Then she said that the callers sounded like they were altering their voice in some way, possibly through digital means, to make themselves sound like a child. She used the specific phrase, like a young girl. She concluded that officers should proceed with extreme caution. All of us were pretty close to the station, so we felt nervous for one another during high-risk cases like this. I radioed back and said 10-4, then drove to the scene. When I turned into the neighborhood, I saw that every single street lamp was out. The entire block had lost power. That meant we would have low visibility going into the home we were investigating, which put us in greater danger. I followed my GPS to the end of the street, where the house was, and saw that Chris had already beaten me. His cruiser was idling in front of the house. I pulled up next to them and rolled down my window. Chris commented on the home's poor condition. I glanced ahead, taking it in for myself. The grass was knee-high. Overgrown bushes blocked out the windows. The roof was dented in several areas and had a ton of missing shingles. It looked completely abandoned. This set off alarm bells in my head. You can gather a lot about someone's mental state by how they treat their living space. I told Chris I'd take the lead. We both stepped out of our cruisers into the pouring rain, opened our umbrellas, and followed the waterlogged path up to the door. Chris clicked on his flashlight. Whenever a second officer like Chris is present during an investigation, their entire job is to protect the leading officer by monitoring the suspect's body language. If the suspect makes a move on the cop that's interrogating them, they neutralize the threat. Chris made the perfect backup because he was both observant and calm under pressure. This allowed me to focus solely on the suspect's story and if I was hearing the truth. When we reached the door, I rang the bell. Then we stood there, listening for movement inside. Rain pounded against our backs. After a few seconds, footsteps shuffled to the door. Then they paused. Whoever was on the other side of the door stood completely still, just waiting. A strange feeling came over me that we were being watched. Slowly, my gaze drifted over to the peephole. As soon as I made eye contact, a distorted shape moved back, like whoever was watching us had pulled their head away. "If you're in there," I said, "we'd like to ask you a few questions. Open up, please." They froze again, as if they were thinking about what to do next. Then the lock started turning. The door creaked open, but only by a foot. From the darkness, a man peeked out of the crack. He looked like he was in his early 30s. He was overweight, balding, and wore thick-brimmed glasses. I took a single look into his eyes and sensed that he was hiding something. I informed him that we'd received a call from his address of someone claiming to be kidnapped. The man acted confused. He apologized and told us it must have been a pocket dial. I asked him if it was a pocket dial, then how could he explain the voice in the phone call? For a split second, the man averted his gaze, then said that he didn't know anything about a voice. I asked him if there was anyone else in the house, and he said he lived alone. Then I told him that, for safety reasons, we needed to have a look inside. "Not without a warrant," he said. These days, a warrant can be obtained within minutes. I went back to my cruiser, called dispatch, and requested communication with the on-call magistrate. 5 minutes later, Claire came back on the radio and told me a judge approved a telephonic warrant and emailed it. We were clear to enter. I showed the warrant to the man. He reluctantly pulled the door open, and I could see that his hands were visibly shaking. I clicked on my own flashlight and stepped inside. A putrid smell immediately hit me. I scanned around to find the source and saw a hallway straight ahead and a room directly to my right. I shined my light into the room and saw what looked like a living room. It was absolutely disgusting. Piles of clothes and stacks of dirty dishes were spread across the carpet. Cockroaches crawled all over them. A couch that looked like it was pulled from the side of the road sat at an angle against the wall. This man obviously used this room as his living space. I'd seen these sorts of living conditions in drug cases before. When I turned to look back at the man, he shifted uncomfortably. I made a mental note to check for paraphernalia once I'd confirmed the house was safe. Then I stepped toward the hallway. My foot struck something. I looked down. In the beam of my flashlight, I saw a pink Barbie doll house that I knew I'd seen before. I thought about it, and I'd realized I'd bought this exact set for my daughter last year for Christmas. I asked the man if he had kids. He said no, but explained to us that sometimes his nieces came over, so he kept a few toys around for them. Chris and I exchanged a look. No mother in their right mind would allow children into this environment. I told him that this was his last chance to tell me if anyone else was in the house. He assured me there wasn't. I started down the hallway and the man followed, saying that nothing was down there. Chris yanked him back by his arm and ordered him to stay put. The hallway had an open room on either side and a closed door at the end, which was probably the basement. I peeked inside the first bedroom, scanning from left to right. I saw more children's toys and even items like diapers scattered across the floor. In the corner, the dark shape of a person was hunched over. I drew my weapon, only to realize that it was a doll, sagging its head down in a rocking chair. The shock of that visual made my heart pound. I leaned against the door frame and steadied my breathing. Chris asked me what I had seen. Before I could respond, I started studying the doll. It was the largest one I had ever seen, every bit as big as a person, and the man had dressed it in women's clothing. On the bed beside it, ladies' blouses, jeans, and lingerie were folded into neat piles. Each pile was separated by color. Meanwhile, the rest of the house was a pigsty. What was happening in this room felt so wrong on many different levels. All clear, I told Chris. I moved further down the hall and glanced into the second bedroom. This one was empty. I reached the final door at the end of the hall when from behind me, the man called and asked if I'd like to see the upstairs instead. I told him yes, but first, I was going to see the basement. The man said again that there was nothing down there. I heard Chris tell the man to stay still, which meant he was probably trying to follow me down the hall. The closer I moved into this part of the house, the more agitated he became. I reached for the handle, twisted the knob, and pushed the door open. It squealed on its hinges. A set of wooden steps descended into a pitch-black room. I shined my light down. I could only see the area that surrounded the landing. It looked equally as messy as the upstairs. From deep inside the room, in an area I couldn't see, something rattled. I told Chris that I had heard movement. The man responded instead, apologizing to me and Chris over and over again. Even though this was the last thing I wanted to do, I had no choice. The man was lying to us. Someone was down there. I headed down the staircase. Each step creaked under my weight. The rattling noise from inside the room grew louder. Behind me, the man repeatedly begged us to stop looking around. I neared the landing and swept my flashlight across stacks of boxes. No one appeared in my line of sight. Across the room, there was another door. The noise was coming from there. I drew my weapon. I commanded whoever was inside to come out slowly with their hands up. Whoever was inside stopped moving. I shouted the same command a second time. The door remained shut. I crossed the room, sliding between boxes and old furniture that blocked the way. My sights were trained on the door. When I stood within several feet, I paused, listening. Whoever was inside remained perfectly still. My anxiety ticked up with each second. So many things could go wrong in this situation. I moved to the side of the door frame in case they were armed and tried to fire through the door. I reached for the knob, grabbed on, and twisted. Then I swung the door open. I was still hidden to the side of the frame. If anything besides empty hands emerged, I would have to use deadly force. After several agonizing moments, nothing came. I said a quick prayer, then aimed my weapon right into the room. What I saw, I can't go into detail on, but basically, this is what happened. A man in his mid-40s was being held captive in that basement. He was a father of 3 and a respected member of the community. Months after he went missing, everyone, including his family, assumed he was dead. After 2 years in captivity, he finally got the chance to escape. Earlier in the night, before we arrived, the homeowner brought the victim's dinner down and made the mistake of leaving his phone behind. The victim managed to activate Siri and call 911. When we arrived on scene, the victim had already been confined in a way that prevented him from calling upstairs or making any kind of substantial noise. Then, when I ordered him to come out, he froze in fear, not because he couldn't obey my command, but because he didn't want me to use lethal force, thinking that he was a threat. Once I opened the door and found him, we arrested the homeowner on the spot and took the victim to the hospital for immediate treatment. I feel incredibly lucky that no one was harmed, and that we could reunite this man with his family. But the most disturbing detail, which has haunted me every day since, is how my dispatcher described the voice of the man who made the call. Why was he speaking like a child? The only explanation that makes sense is that this man was forced to speak in that young tone of voice for so long that even when he called the station, that's the only way he could communicate. And if he was forced to do that, what else inside that house was he forced to do? I live on a large property in California. We have lots of animals, and honestly, it's a beautiful place. But at night, it's a different story. There are also some renters in a house out back, which used to be a barn. We've all experienced something creepy or paranormal here, but this night still haunts me. A lot of times, I stayed on the property with the renter's son, Aiden. My dad and brothers would go out of town throughout the week to work. Aiden's mom would leave every other week to go work out of town as well, meaning Aiden and myself would stay and take care of the animals or do chores if we weren't in school. It was around September of last year when this occurred. School got off at 3:30, but Aiden and I would take the bus home, so we'd get to the house at around 4 to 4:10. On this day, we got home starving, so we went inside to make some food, then outside to do our chores. By that time, it must have been around 6:30. After working for a bit, Aiden went inside to go play video games, while I stayed to clean the horses. Time flew by, and I remember looking at my phone when I was done and reading 9:46 p.m. I hurried to feed the animals and clean out their waters. I was in the middle of cleaning one of the waters when I got the chills. I felt someone watching me. Creeped out, I looked up to check my surroundings, but like always, I didn't see anything. I took a seat on some bales of hay while I let the water fill up. I was playing on my phone and spaced out for a few minutes, but snapped back to reality when I heard the water spilling. Just as I looked up to see it, I felt a sharp chill go up my back. In the distance, I saw a dark figure crouched behind a tree on our fence line, looking straight in my direction. When I saw it, the first thing that came to my mind was that it was Aiden for sure. I called him and said, "Dude, quit trying to scare me and come help me feed." Right away, he replied, "What do you mean? I'm inside." Then, I noticed when I called Aiden, the figure didn't even move. Not an inch. This confirmed I did not know who it was. Aiden heard my voice shake a bit and realized what was going on. He said again, "Bro, I'm inside. That's not me." Keep in mind, the whole time I was on the phone with Aiden, I was watching this dark figure, but I hung up and looked right at it with my full attention. After a moment, it got up and started jogging away. My heart dropped with fear and anxiety. I started running toward it and yelling at it to slow down and to reveal themselves. I chased it all the way to the back of Aiden's house. That's when Aiden came out and started looking for it too. I saw a glimpse of it jumping over some boxes and tall grass. What happened next completely freaked me out. It jumped over our 6-foot fence like nothing. As it flew through the air, I got a better look at it. It was around 6'5" and lengthy. I chased after it over the fence, then ran it down the gravel road. Around this time, something strange started happening to me. Everything was becoming darker. I was losing my vision. By the time I got to the edge of our property, my vision went almost completely black. Meanwhile, I'm still yelling at this figure and jogging towards it. I went down the little hill and saw him looking directly at me. His eyes were wide open like golf balls and white as snow. That was the last thing I saw before I collapsed on the ground, hyperventilating and freaking the hell out. I couldn't wrap my head around what was happening. At some point, Aiden came down the hill to get me. I could still barely see, but he told me the figure was long gone. After he helped me get to my feet, we made our way back to the barn with the horses to finish feeding them. I was still shaken up and needed to do something normal like chores to calm down. I slowly got my vision back as well, but I still didn't feel quite right. After everything was done, I went inside to get ready for bed, hoping that was the end of it. But then, around 2:30 in the morning, I woke up, seemingly to nothing at all. I must have been awake for around 15 seconds before I heard my downstairs window open. That night, I slept with my door open for some reason. That's why I heard it so clear. I was still half asleep, so I wasn't sure if my mind was playing tricks on me. Not until I heard heavy footsteps coming up the stairs. I felt my heart drop. I bolted out of bed and got my dad's 9mm from my drawer. He always left it with me just in case something like this ever happened. Below, the steps were getting closer and heavier. Then, they stopped right at my door. I was standing at the foot of my bed with the gun pointed towards the door frame. My heart was beating so fast, I felt like it was going to come out of my chest. I then heard them walk right inside my room. They stepped towards me and stopped around a foot away. But there wasn't anything or anyone. All I was hearing was footsteps. I thought I was going to go blind with madness again. But then I heard them slowly back away. I kept the gun pointed in their direction until they left the room. Then suddenly, everything went quiet. No wind blowing, no crickets, frogs, nothingness. After 5 minutes, I laid back down. I didn't end up going to sleep after everything. I just stayed up praying for the rest of the night. I've never had anything like this happen to me before or since, and I still have no way to explain it. I just hope it never happens again.